He said that such optimism about negotiations is, quote, used to manipulate the financial and oil markets and escape the quagmire in which the U.S. and Israel are trapped. So let's unpack this a little bit. Here's the timeline. So Thursday, there are these reports that Turkey, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar are lobbying the United States to make peace with Iran. These mediators are stepping in and they're trying to find a resolution. Europe is advocating for this behind the scenes as well. And so there is talk of talking. There are a lot of rumors that back channels and closed door, indirect meetings through intermediaries are happening. We have no idea if that's true.
It's hard to tell who is really running the show right now. There has to be some established leadership, but if we've killed all their leaders and they're scrambling to tell us who their leadership is, the Ayatollah, the newly sworn in Ayatollah, has not been seen in public. So it's a little bit chaotic. We're only hearing from one side. I don't trust anything that is coming out of Truth Social when it comes to Iran. What I see is, and this is just from observing Trump over the years, he's got himself backed in a corner and he doesn't know how to get out of it because he can't bear the shame that comes with it. And also that removes that deterrence that the US has had for multiple years. If the Iranian regime survives this, which I think they will, it'll give them so much power domestically, and it'll also become a deterrent internationally. If you are in the Iranian opposition, this is not good news for you. This is an indication that the regime is not going anywhere. This regime is going to stay with them for the rest of their lives. You know, there's no amount of protest will uproot them if the US and Israel, with all its military might, was not able to uproot them. It caused some damage, it killed some leaders, but the regime is still intact and they're still firing missiles.
But there's all these rumors that some Iranian personnel are indirectly talking to some American personnel about how to bring the war to a close. And this is being brokered, like I said, by other regional powers. Now, I wouldn't read too much into this because as it stands right now, these Arab intermediaries, they seem to have no influence at all. It was these Arab intermediaries that tried to get the U.S. and Iran together for this second round of negotiations a month ago. It was Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the Emirates, Oman, Turkey, Pakistan, Egypt, all these countries. They all tried in February to get the U.S. and Iran back together in a room, which they then did in Oman, in Switzerland, to try to hash it out, and it didn't work. And they are lobbying the United States to try to de-escalate the conflict even now. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the Emirates, they want us to finish Iran off, but they want the war over because they cannot sustain these attacks on their infrastructure. It's destroying their real estate, tourism, banking industries, not to mention energy, not to mention the trade that's been disrupted with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. And that's not working either. So there's much talk, none of it confirmed, none of it verified, and all of it being denied. Iran denies they're talking to the United States in any capacity. And yet there are these persistent rumors that Arab countries are trying to broker a deal. This is on Thursday. Saturday, Trump makes this ultimatum and says that Iran has to open up the strait or else. Now, as I said at the top of the show, one of the theories here, one of the working theories, is that everything that Trump does, all of these bellicose threats, all of the biggest operations, they always happen during the weekend. And I'm talking about just in the past several weeks since this war started. If you recall,
is he trying to imply that is done because the markets are closed on the weekend, which would imply that the Trump administration is deliberately trying to manipulate the markets? That's a huge accusation, but let's keep hearing some more.
The war started on Friday at midnight, which is in the middle of the daytime in Iran. Normally, you don't launch your all-out ambush sneak attack during the day.
Well, I'll give them a pass there because the mullahs were all gathered in one spot during the day and they took their shot. If you remember, the previous bombing was the raids during the 12-day war. That was done at night. So I don't know if that is really manipulation. Maybe they did as it got tougher. They thought maybe they could get through this within a few days. When it got tough and the markets started shaking and selling off, they decided then to try to get ahead of the market and do certain things over the weekend. That's my take on it. But I think Nick is trying to suggest here that they may have deliberately done this during the day, on a weekend, on a Friday, I think, on a Friday, so that it'll be after the markets are closed and that it won't have any impact. Maybe a little bit on aftermarket trading and pre-market on Monday, but by Monday, it would be de-escalated and there wouldn't be any issues. Maybe that's what he's trying to get at.
Because you want to do it under the cover of darkness. So why did they do it at midnight on Friday? Well, they gave some excuses. They said there was confidence that the Ayatollah would be in his residence at that time. They had to act on the intelligence. And there's some other tactical reasons, they said. Could possibly the reason be that the markets had closed? The markets open on Monday morning. They close on Friday afternoon. So did Trump wait until the markets closed to launch an attack on Iran? Why would he do that? Well, the reason is any war in the Persian Gulf is going to cause significant pain in the stock market because oil, natural gas, fertilizer, and other essential commodities, helium, as well as aluminum, many things, especially things that are needed for data centers, technology, that all moves through the Persian Gulf and out the Strait of Hormuz. Everybody knows you bomb Iran, Strait of Hormuz is closed, and you're going to get an economic catastrophe. So in other words, Trump waits for the markets to close to basically cuck all the traders and investors. They're panicking. They see the writing on the wall, which is that there's going to be a global energy crisis, followed by a food shortage, followed by the entire AI bubble is going to burst. In that order. You bomb Iran, they close the Strait of Hormuz. Strait of Hormuz is closed. You constrain the supply of LNG, which causes huge price spikes in Europe. It constrains the supply of oil, which causes an energy shortage in Asia, and the price of oil skyrockets, and it causes inflation. After that, because fertilizer flows through the Gulf, most farmers have not secured fertilizer yet, you're going to have a food shortage. That's going to cause all inflation to rise. Without helium, without other components, the cost of electricity coupled with the cost of components for data centers is going to make all of these AI companies not profitable because they run on energy and commodities that go through the strait. And that is a source of all the GDP growth for the past year. So you have these cascading effects that all the traders and investors know about, but they can't do anything about it until Monday. So Trump launches the attack Friday night, and they say the war will last 4 days. Well, why do they say 4 days? Because by the third day, you also have the timing that it was the Jewish holiday of Purim, which was on Monday, which is interesting, and that's when the Jews commemorate the slaughter of 80,000 Iranians after they win a war against them. But why do they say 4 days? They want to launch the war on Friday after markets close, fight really hard through Saturday, through Sunday, hoping that by Monday morning, it's almost over.
So I was just looking this up on my phone. It's amazing how fast time goes. But we've been fighting now for a month. The war was launched February 28th. So I'm just going to go to Yahoo stock and just check what the markets look. I'll look at only the 3 major futures here, or the 3 major indexes. I'll look at the 3 major indexes. There was not much of a big swing from the start of the year. Goes up, a little bit of a correction, not so much. Nothing catastrophic. This is February here, February 28th. It looks like markets, the Dow was doing pretty well. And boom, this is where we take a big dive down. Right here between March 4th and March 6th. That week was rough. This is where we lost quite a bit. Came under 48,000. So this is a Dow. Let me go back and see if I can find the S&P 500. A little bit more steep drops, right about here. We're seeing a little bit more into correction territory. So we've lost about almost 7% on the S&P 500. That's a lot of money. I mean, you're talking hundreds of billions, maybe even $1 trillion. And then the last thing I want to look at before we go back to Nick is the VIX. This is one of the most important things I tend to look at. This is a volatility index. So this one will typically tell you investor sentiment, whether they're optimistic about the markets or not. A higher VIX would typically mean that investors are shaken and expecting more volatility and more pain. I think high is typically when it's above 20. So you're sitting at about 28. It would, it's come down a little bit. It was in the 30s in the last few times that I looked at this. All these rises you're seeing shows that we've had some serious volatility, right? Or expecting some serious market downturn. I'm sure your 401k accounts are really struggling right now, right? I'm not surprised that the Trump administration will be forced to get ahead of the markets and calm people down.
And by Monday morning, everybody is relieved. Everybody is no longer panicking. They see that Trump has got everything under control. They're trusting the plan. Plan trusters are in control, and the economy resumes as normal. Maybe that was the play. And it was also last week that Trump launched the attack on Kharg Island. Remember when Trump bombed Kharg Island, which is the central hub of Iran's energy that goes through the Persian Gulf? That was on a Friday as well. Bombed all the military assets, not the energy, but the military assets, the runway strip and the dock and all the military assets, also on a Friday. And then this weekend launches this ultimatum on Saturday night. 48 hours expires on Monday night. And the question is, did Trump do all of this so that by Monday morning, if Iran did not open up the strait, then Trump could call it all off and he could say, well, we're not going to hit Iran anymore, so all of Wall Street can relax. He says it after the markets close, so they'll all panic in the after hours trading. And then before markets open on Monday morning, he can change his mind. And it looks like that's exactly what happened. Just judging by the timeline alone, his announcement on Saturday caused everything to tank. It caused oil to skyrocket, gold collapsed, Bitcoin collapsed, the S&P 500 collapsed. Everything collapsed on Saturday because, again, all the investors and traders priced in.
I'm curious as to why gold will collapse, because usually when people are, gold is more like a safe asset, right? It's like a bond. People hold gold like they hold bonds. So you would think that gold would be one of the commodities when people are panicking, especially when the VIX is up. Typically, most people tend to go into fixed safe assets like gold. So I'm wondering why gold will tank. Is it because Dubai holds a lot of it and people and the bombs were going over there? I'm not understanding something economically here. Maybe sometimes the theory doesn't really apply. But if you know why he's saying that, please let me know in the chat. We are all learning, right? We're all learning. I'd like to know why gold. I could go back quickly and look at it, but I'm curious to see why gold will sell off when people are panicking. It's very interesting to me.
We're going to be rebuilding the energy economy for the next 5 years. If Trump bombs these power plants and Iran bombs, they unleash on LNG, oil, and desalination, it's over. And they knew that. But then Trump saves the day on Monday morning and says, you know what, never mind. And then the markets flipped. And all of a sudden, when the markets open a half hour later, everything rallies. And so whereas the market lost $2 trillion on Saturday, it made up about half of that minutes after Trump's announcement on Monday morning. And you have to wonder, first of all, clearly, there is a calculated deception going on. This is part of U.S. tactics and strategy.
That's a huge accusation, though.
Cannot trust the government in a time of war because what the government says and does is also read and heard and seen by the enemy. So it's a signal. It's not just information for the masses. It's a signal to our opponents. So on its face, from first principles, you can't trust what the government says, but we also now know the government is just engaging in strategic lying. They're just lying about everything.
Wow.
All the actors in the whole government are lying about everything all the time. They're lying about that school that was hit. They're lying about who started the war, the imminent threat. They're lying about everything. And this whole 48-hour ultimatum was a ruse. It was another deception. That's one. So number one is you can't trust Trump on anything. Everything he says is a lie. Number two, aside from that, and maybe more to the point, Trump is conducting a foreign policy with regard to the markets. And you sort of have to do that on some level. We are in a war of attrition. It's now an economic war. And that means that it concerns the allocation of resources. It's not just about killing their guys and blowing up their stuff. It's now about supply chains, logistics, securing essential commodities, keeping our economy going, controlling prices in the world. If that's the case, then you do have to take into account how the markets are going to react. And Trump, as commander-in-chief, fighting this economic attritional war, he does have to take care of the markets. He does have to reassure the people that are buying and selling the commodities, that are speculating on the commodities.
See, that is a part of the war that I think the Americans didn't plan well for. They planned for decisive military action to bomb Tehran, to bomb them into submission, and to hope that these guys just give up and run, And the Iranians have been wargaming for this, and they always knew that they couldn't fight this pound for pound, so they were going to have an economic war on oil and gas due to its geography, right? So geography is winning this war, okay? And right now, the only way that the U.S. turns this around is either through a negotiation that seems more like a submission from the Iranian side, or full military action that would entail taking certain territory around the southwestern coast of Iran and certain islands like Karg to be able to have the flow of oil go through the straits. But yeah, that's one part. If you're able to do that, you're still not going to stop Iranian bombs from hitting Saudi plans and causing chaos in the Gulf and all these other GCC countries, which will still affect the oil outputs because, seizing Iranian oil, which was really not part of the calculation, remember they are sanctioned, right? It's not going to change much in terms of oil prices. However, it'll take the speculative prices out. But if Iran continues to hit Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, Oman, and Saudi Arabia consistently, as they're doing, and if they start to target this energy infrastructure even more, and the refineries and the desalination plants, then they'll still be in a fight. I'm very surprised how well they fought. I thought it would be done within a couple of days, but they got some weapons, man. They got some weapons. It's very important not to underestimate your opponent. It seems like we may have. All right, let me know what you think in the comment section. I'll see you in the next one.